when they're found.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the fourth foot was found on May 22nd, 2008. It was a sock and a sneaker. This time, the foot belongs to a woman, however.
Oh.
The sneaker she was wearing had been manufactured only in 1999.
Okay. So even older.
So even older.
Okay, this is getting weirder.
Okay. So the fifth foot was found on June 6th, 2008. It was floating in the water. It wasn't on the land. Because I guess at this point people are looking for feet.
Okay. I want to say something about that because that was one of the funny things that I found when I was doing the research. Is somebody said, well, it's crazy that we're finding all of these severed feet, but people are aware of it because the media's got a hold of it. So now every time a person sees a shoe floating in the water, they wade out and grab it to see if it's got a foot in it.
So not something I would necessarily do.
I wouldn't either, but I think, it's kind of when you don't know that all these feet are being found on the beach kind of where you are, you think, oh, a sneaker.
Yeah, you just,
it's a piece of trash. You ignore it. Yeah,
great,
I probably walked past several severed feet in my lifetime and
maybe
not realized it.
you don't know. So this foot, through DNA testing, was found to be the left foot of the third foot that was found. So the third foot was a right foot.
So they were a matching pair.
There was a matching pair.
Endless possibilities.
There's another joke in there.
And it's fun. The more you like, the more you realize
So
that there's a
the
lot
sixth
more out there waiting
foot
to be explored.
was found on
Maybe
August
you'll have a
1st,
hilarious
2008,
dating anecdote.
and it was
Or
covered in
maybe
seaweed.
you'll
So
meet the
again,
love
this
of your
kind of
life.
goes back to
On
the
Tinder,
like
it starts
people are
with a
kind of
swipe.
actively looking
Download
for
Tinder
feet.
today
Yeah.
and
You see a
explore
sneaker
all
covered
the
in
possibilities
seaweed, and
for
you're like,
yourself.
oh, awesome, another foot,
Yeah.
cool,
Another severed,
another severed foot.
there were probably more too, because imagine the number of people that didn't turn them into the authorities and instead
Just
took them
kept
home.
them.
Yeah, for souvenirs.
Yeah.
That's really
Ew.
disturbing.
That's
really
horrible.
disturbing.
That's awful.
Never offer to show me your sneaker collection, please.
Ew.
Actually, let me get it.
No.
So this one was a size 11. It was a right foot. And it was in a large black top shoe. I've seen pictures of this. It's also a sneaker. It's like, like the Air Jordans or whatever.
Okay, so
but
it's
an
more of a
off-brand.
high top kind of. Okay.
And it contained bones and human flesh. And this one was found in Washington State in the United States.
Thank you all so much for your
Not
support.
Canada.
And we'll see you
This
soon.
is the one on August 1st, 2008.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the first time they've crossed the border. It's a long walk.
This show is the funniest.
Sorry, I can't help myself.
So the seventh foot was found on November 11th, 2008. It was also found floating. It was also a woman's foot, and via DNA testing, it was found to be the mate of that fourth foot, the woman's foot.
The first
that we found.
foot that was a woman.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So the eighth foot was found on October 8th, 2009, inside a running shoe. The ninth foot was found on August 27th, 2010, also in Washington State, and somehow it was determined that the foot had been in water for 2 months. It'd been floating around for 2 months in the
How do
water.
you figure out a foot's been in water for
Maybe it's like how much how waterlogged it is, how much
how
decomposition? Or?
Yeah, decomposition and stuff like that, or the amount of nibbling by fishies. But so they actually made a determination for the ninth foot, but they hadn't done it for any of the previous feet.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. This is
I'm
the
gonna
weird
guess
one.
it's the age.
Maybe it's getting a little. This one also is a little weird because size-wise, they suggest this foot was either like a small-footed woman or a juvenile, and it was just a foot. It wasn't found with a sneaker.
Oh, so this was a bare foot just floating along.
And this is found floating in the water or on the beach?
It was on the beach, I believe. Yeah, but it had been in the water previously. Because we'll get into this, but feet by themselves don't float very well.
Exactly. They float a lot better when they have fluffy little tennis shoes attached to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So they sent this foot out for DNA testing, and the tests were inconclusive. The 10th foot was found on December 5th, 2010, also in Washington, but in like Tacoma.
That's quite a ways
Which
south.
is really south compared to where they've been finding most of these feet.
For anybody who doesn't know, so we're right on the border of the state of Washington and Canada, and that's where Seattle is essentially. And these things are all happening right in that area.
That's where Seattle and like Vancouver, BC are.
Yes.
Kind of pretty close.
And
Yeah.
then to go to Tacoma,
That's quite a ways
an
south.
hour-plus drive in a
South,
car at
yeah.
freeway speed. So we're looking at 60-plus, 70-plus
Yeah.
miles farther south.
Yeah.
That's quite a distance.
Which
Yeah.
makes me suspect that one's a copycat.
Me.
So I'm going to get my foot in the news.
Get a foot in the door.
Ah.
I'm funnier than I thought.
So that foot was also very small. It was found in a hiking boot. And it was a boy's size 6, so either like a juvenile or a small adult. To give you two size reference, that's the size that my foot is.
Okay.
Your foot.
People that are not in the studio,
You probably
Well-
I would say you wear a men's 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I wear a women's 6 or 7, which is a boy's 6.
Okay, well, obviously I don't buy small shoes
Yeah,
that size.
which
that
is a
often.
men's like 4.
Okay.
Anyway, a picture of
Never mind.
Picture of
Mine.
Devin's foot will be posted on the website. With this story.
So that'll be good reference.
Yes.
The 11th foot was then discovered on August 30th, 2011. So we're getting to like fairly recent stuff.
Yeah, this is
here.
now, what, 4 years this has been happening? Okay.
Yep.
Wow, this one had a bonus.
Yeah, it did have a bonus. The bonus, was a leg bone.
Yeah.
And it was found to be floating in a marina. So this one, again, kind of an anomaly. The 12th foot was found November 4th, 2011. It, however, was identified as belonging to a local fisherman to the area where it was found that had disappeared.
And where was that found?
Yeah.
It was found in a lake nearby.
Oh, like so. This one is like.
It's a total anomaly.
Yeah, this is not really.
It was in a
But they
lake?
lump it in, yeah. So the lake and the river and everything, it's close.
Okay.
Close.
All right, I'm ruling that one out of the list, but okay.
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
should be tossed off.
Yeah, I agree. But 13 was found attached to a leg bone in a plastic bag in Seattle, Washington, floating in the river.
Dexter style.
Dexter style.
Yeah.
Clearly. So that
So-
one, another anomaly. And then the 14th one is also an anomaly, which I don't know why it's generally accepted that these are all lumped in together, but I don't
Because
agree
it's
with
this
it.
phenomena of feet
Yeah.
appearing.
Well,
Yeah.
but the thing is that there have been some feet appearing like on the East Coast in Florida, things like that. They're not lumped in with this case. It's just on the West Coast. But this one was found on September 16th, 2013 in San Francisco, California. Which, like, I just feel like if there is any connection between these feet, that foot is not connected.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, but so was this one the one that was found in 2013 in San Francisco? Was it also in a running shoe?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, and then there's one more foot. It was found in July of 2008 and identified by DNA testing to belong to a man who was suicidal. And there's been no further information released due to his family's request.
Okay, so that one's you're presenting that one a little out of order just because of the circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now
that you confused me when you jump back in time.
Oh,
I got
sorry.
it. I got it.
So let's be very clear here. That one has been identified to a real person who people know.
Uh-huh.
The other ones that have been identified have not been identified to people, just that they match each other.
They've
Yeah.
just been mated together, but we don't know who
So
they
we don't know
belong
who
to.
the humans
Yeah.
that they belong to.
Okay.
So now
So-
the July 2008 foot, that was found where?
Yeah, also in the sea.
In
Yeah.
the
Up
Salish
Vancouver.
Sea.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was like and presumably this guy jumped off a ship or
He jumped off a bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, was what the kind of theory was. He was known to be suicidal.
Out of
Once the
respect, he
bridges.
had his history and he lived near one of the bridges.
Yeah,
he
and
lived in
that's
the
really
area so
all
he could get to the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
There's a theory floating around.
Oh, bad.
We're terrible people.
Oh, this is a bad one for that. There's a theory floating around that these feet may belong to. There's a lot of theories floating around. One of them is that there's a serial murderer that has a foot fetish. What? Listen, okay. So I guess the theory is like sound kind of a little bit that it's Dexter style, totally.
Yeah.
They kill these people, they take them out into the ocean, they cut off their feet, and then drop everything into the ocean or to the sea, and their feet float away,
Yeah.
and the bodies sink.
Yeah.
And that's why they're all because this person has been active in this area at this time.
Okay.
Now if they, but this is easily provable because then the feet would have been severed by a bone saw, presumably, correct?
Yeah.
So
But
that
for-
would be evidence, I think.
Well, but correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if you're going to go into the decomposition process that is
Yep,
happening.
I totally am.
Because that, I think, is where that part, we lose that piece of the puzzle.
Well, no, I
Yeah.
don't think the bone really decomposes the way flesh does in water.
Well,
You're absolutely correct, and we'll get into this in just a minute.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think this theory is total bunk.
Okay.
Serial killer.
Serial killer, stupid. It doesn't. There's so many things it doesn't explain. Especially one of the things it doesn't explain is that if there is a serial killer in this area and he's dumping bodies, there would be so many people that had been reported missing, and they could have they've DNA tested all of these different shoes with all the different feet that have the shoes on them.
Yeah, and there would be
They
some
would have been
bodies
able to match.
washing up on shore.
Absolutely.
And also, if he had a foot fetish, wouldn't you think he'd keep the feet?
I
rather
think
than-
so, yeah.
I mean, hey,
Yeah, that was my other thing. Well, that would mean he'd keep him as a prize, not chuck him over last and let him float free.
I mean, on the other hand, maybe he had an anti-foot fetish. He felt that feet were hideous and unclean, so
Horrible.
he chopped them off and kept the rest of the corpse for his collection,
Yeah.
and then threw them in the sea. But yeah, it's not really credible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let's talk about decomposition. As
Yeah.
Steve was talking about. What happens as the body is decaying in water? We were just talking about how upsetting the term degloving was, right?
Yeah.
it's kind of gross.
Recently, this is not as upsetting, but it's
Still pretty gross.
still pretty gross. So what happens is it just begins, to decay, right? You're in the water, and your flesh and your muscles start to decay, but your bones don't really decay. So what happens is your body starts to break apart at the weak points. What are your weak points?
Joints.
Joints.
Yeah.
What's one of the weakest of the joints? Your ankle. Especially if it's attached to a big floaty thing.
Yes.
And the weight of your body is dragging it under. Yeah.
So that's the theory, kind of where people are going with why we've been discovering these feet. Feet have kind of been discovered.
Yeah, they were attached to, because you notice that
They're all athletic.
which would float.
Most of them.
Versus Oxfords, for example, wouldn't probably float.
Right. Most of them, there's
Doc Martens probably
right.
wouldn't float.
We've got the barefoot. We've got a foot in a hiking shoe, and I don't know about you guys, but my hiking boots have never been particularly
No.
Maybe they
Yeah.
are.
They might be.
They might be. But there could be like an air pocket in there.
Yeah, there's a possibility
Yeah.
there.
So that's kind of the theory as to why we're finding these things. And so they float.
Okay. They float.
They
Yeah.
float.
Yeah.
On top of that, you've got the fact that it's estimated that a body will pretty much stay intact for about 3 years underwater. Breaking off at the weak
It
point.
won't look too hot.
It's not going to look good,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be crushed. It's still
It's-
kind of identifiable.
Sort of, kind of.
Not only do bodies kind of resemble themselves for 3 years, but it's estimated that a foot could float as far as 1,000 miles.
And the thing is, if
I
you,
would
if
think that it could go a lot further than
it
that.
potentially, but if you think about it, a foot that is encased in a sock in a shoe, normally if it was exposed, no shoe, no sock, it's going to start breaking down, and all those little bones are going to work their way out. The whole thing's going to shred apart. Whereas when it's stuck inside of a container, for lack of a
Kind
better
of protects
term,
it, kind of holds it all in place.
good. For the most part, it's gonna be relatively in original condition, other than the fact that it's waterlogged and
Or hard, it's got bones,
kinda gross.
some human flesh.
yeah, everything's still gonna be stuck in there because if you think about it, unless you're wearing those little athletics booty socks for running socks, those are what they are.
Right.
Socks tend to come up just a little bit above the ankle, so as soon as what's above the ankle goes away, they close up.
Yeah.
And they hold everything in.
They hold that freshness in. Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah, anyway,
So
Oh, we were so not getting our Nike sponsorship.
we're not. We're just not. That's
Probably
kind of
not.
why I brought this story. Because I thought they would.
Got it.
Anyways, I really like this theory as to why
theory is
we're
that?
finding a lot of these now. And it kind of ties into why it's important that we pay attention to the years that these things are manufactured. And this theory is that these feet belong to victims of the 2004 Asian tsunami.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
So run that through for me.
So here's the way that theory kind of works, is none of these shoes were manufactured past 2004.
This is the ones that were found, or all of the ones that were found up to about 2008,
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. Yeah.
Because after that, they kind of just started getting scattered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that I think I would qualify as viable.
The core group.
The core group, yeah. They're not manufactured after 2004, and they're all shoes that are make and model that were
Sold in Asia.
sold primarily in Asia.
Yeah.
And it would help explain the influx. Is if you think these bodies were all kind of washed out to sea at the same time, they kind of decompose at the same rate. So there's a high instance of, they all got caught up in the same currents.
But this is against interesting something. Well, there's two things. Number one, I mean, did anybody run any DNA analysis on these things to find out if they belong to mostly Thai people?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that'd be worth finding out.
Well, I don't know that they can find that specifically. I think when they run DNA analysis, they're looking for a match to put it against. I don't know that they're going to the lengths
I think
to
that they can
figure
actually
out the
identify.
ethnicity.
But actually, have you guys ever heard of the North Pacific Drift?
No.
This rings a bell, but I can't think of what it is.
Yeah, it's a major current. There's a circular current that runs around the Pacific Basin, and so it goes down the west coast of North America, and then goes west across the ocean. And when it hits Asia, it turns and goes north, and then eventually turns and goes east again.
And completes the circuit.
And where it hits, and I can show you guys a picture of it, but where it hits the west coast of North America, it splits into two parts. One goes south, one goes north towards Alaska, and the other one goes south towards San Francisco. And that spot is, well, right about Vancouver Island, Puget Sound.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, actually. I don't know why I didn't come up with that in my research. That seems like it would be very helpful to this theory.
Yeah, I know, but I'll show it to you after the show.
I know.
Yeah, but,
I'm going to be honest. If I've got to put in my 2 cents as to what I think it is, I think that one of the few people that's been identified, the guy who committed suicide, presumably from having jumped from a bridge, what happens when a body hits water and dies is they initially sink. Well, they float for a little bit and then they sink.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why there's, is it Tom Sawyer, where they go floating down and they're firing the cannon because the concussion will shake the bodies loose? Because a body gets stuck in the muck that's on the bottom of a river.
Yeah.
So if there's a bridge in that area, almost every major city has a major bridge that's notorious for people throwing themselves off of. So to me, it makes sense that it's probably a bunch of people in the area that at one point in a relatively small time frame threw themselves from the bridge, hit the bottom, got stuck in the sediment and the muck, and then I go with the theory that the weak points are what break off, and this wasn't such a big deal because shoes are now, as Joe put it, puffier and puffier. So they've got those bigger chunks on them that are floating foam. That to me seems like the valid theory on this.
I guess my problem with that is the lack of finding any other body parts ever.
That's true.
So I think
because
when you dive, you go in head first.
Do you? I think you just kind of hurl yourself at the.
I'm kidding.
I think the reason the tsunami theory is my most valuable theory is because that's a long distance for something that doesn't float particularly well to travel. Whereas if you got the buoyant shoe on you, it makes way more local bodies. You would think that more bodies would have been
identified by
DNA.
Yeah.
Or, the DNA testing, or bodies showing up someplace else. They do a lot of work in rivers like that. It dredges a lot of stuff
But there
up.
are a lot of people in major cities who nobody knows what happens to because they just disappear.
This is true.
And
That's true.
I mean, let's be honest. If I'm a street kid living in British Columbia and I decide that I've got nothing more and my family doesn't know where I am, they're not going to submit my DNA and that's going to be put into a giant bank. They're going, I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, to me, Occam's razor to me says that's the simplest answer, which would make the most sense.
That's fair.
That's just me.
I don't really know that that's even the simplest answer, though. I mean, the tsunami one fits just as well. Also, the possibilities that the North Pacific Drift, again, it's like if a ship had sunk or